So on the one hand, all of us are very aware of different types of digital technologies which have sort of shortened the distance between nations, between consumers and companies across continents. On the other hand, the geopolitical tensions are actually creating problems for this connectivity. And so this tension between, on the one hand, the digital connectivity and the other hand, geopolitical tensions, that I think is what is really the challenge for us, especially for multinationals.
So optimization and resilience are fundamentally based on the concept of the trade-off. This is my understanding. And I believe this is the reason why traditional supply chain management is no longer viable as of now.
So I think, there is benefit in Intelligent Hub, and there are lots of benefits with Intelligent or advantages with Intelligent Edge. I think the question is not either or, but how can you combine the best of both? Situations or contexts where globalization is more dominant, you can have Intelligent Hub still, and where localization forces are more dominant, you can have Intelligent Edge. So how can you combine these two in your multinational organization?
こんにちは。NTT データ経営研究所とクニエの社長をしております山口です。今日はケースウエスタンリザーブ大学のサティッシュ・ナンビサン教授のインタビューをご紹介したいと思います。このサティッシュ・ナンビサン先生はデジタルマルチナショナルズという本を書かれております。私どもはこの本を翻訳して7月に出版予定でございます。私は以前対談させていただいたのですが、今回はより詳しい対談をということで、グローバルサプライチェーンの専門家でありますクニエの笹川亮平さんにインタビューをしてもらいました。このサティッシュ・ナンビさん教授のお考えを少し紹介しますと、今まで多くの企業は生産コストの低減とマーケットの拡大を求めてグローバル化を展開してきました。その中でデジタルの活用といえば、グローバルのサプライチェーンの最適化や経営情報を一元的に見える化するための統一 ERP の導入などがデジタル化の取り組みでありました。また昨今は世界経済の状況が大きく変わってきております。米中対立や米国の関税引き上げと新たな分断化と言われるようなことが大きく起きておりまして、各企業は新たなグローバル戦略の再定義が求められているのではないでしょうか。またデジタル化につきましても、世界の顧客にダイレクトにアプローチする EC の活用でありますとか、ソーシャルメディアを活用したブランド向上ができますし、またデジタル化につきましても世界の顧客にダイレクトにアプローチできる EC を活用した展開でありますとか、ソーシャルメディアを活用して世界的にブランドを上げるような取り組みも可能となっております。また各国のパートナーとデジタルを活用してつながっていく連携でありますとかエコシステムの構築というのも可能となります。世界のタレントと連携して新たな研究開発をやっていくようなこともデジタルを活用することによって可能となってきております。このように分断化に代表される変化する世界情勢の対応と新たなデジタル活用を組み合わせたグローバル戦略というのが今後重要になってくるかと思います。このインタビューを通じてサティッシュ・ナンビさん教授のこのデジタルを活用した新たなグローバル戦略をどう策定していくかということをこのビデオを通じて皆さんに見ていただければと思いますし、またより詳しい話はこの書籍を読んでいただければという具合に思います。まずはこのインタビューのを視聴いただければと思いますのでよろしくお願いいたします。
Hello everyone. My name is Ryohei Sasakawa. I am a senior partner at the Kunie Corporation. Currently, I am responsible for consulting services related to supply chain management. For over 20 years, I have been supporting the implementation and improvement of global supply chain management in the Japanese manufacturing company. In the past, Japan grew and became multinational based on advanced product technology and physical products. However, since 2000, Japanese companies have been left behind by digital native companies such as Google and Amazon. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to a remarkable book titled The Digital Multinational, authored by Dr. Satish and published in 2022. He is widely recognized as a prominent researcher and thought leader in the field of the innovation management, entrepreneurship, and global business strategies. This book describes how multinational companies can use digital technology to compete in a world where business is driven by the forces of both globalization and localization. I believe that this book is very helpful for executives to particularly implement their company's global strategy in their complex digital world. Thank you for your time, Satish-san. It's been great to see you again. Could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sasakawa. I'm very, very happy to be here. So I'm, like you just mentioned, I'm a professor of design and innovation at Case Western Reserve. And the book that we wrote with my colleague Yadong Lu at University of Miami is, we think it's very timely because a lot of multinationals are sort of navigating these challenges that geopolitical forces have thrown at them in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years. And I think so that's what the motivation for this book was.
Thank you, Satish-san. So today we have 3 parts of the dialogue. Part 1, I would like to ask you what kind of the strategy of your book mentioned about this one. Second part, I would like to discuss with you about your intelligent hub and intelligent edge concepts in detail. At the final part of this dialogue, I would like to discuss about how Japanese company will improve using your loose coupling and digital hub and digital edge, intelligent hub and intelligent edge concept. Okay, so let's move on to first dialogue. I think this is a Satish's connectivity strategy framework using 2 axes, such as tight coupling and loose coupling. It is organized along these 2 axes from various perspectives. Please tell us about the characteristics of this strategic framework and what kind of the companies are suitable for applying these strategies.
Absolutely. So I think the key word here is connectivity, right? Multinational companies have subsidiaries in different countries, and connectivity is the basic way in which the management of the different subsidiaries happens. So I think the nature of the connectivity is what is really important. And I can identify sort of 2 tensions in this connectivity. So on the one hand, all of us are very aware of different types of digital technologies, which have sort of shortened the distance between nations, between consumers and companies across continents. And so on the one hand, one could say that there is a digital globalization that has happened. Connectivity has become very easy for consumers to connect with companies through social media, for companies to connect with the subsidiaries through IoT and other new technologies. So on the one hand, the cost of connectivity has come down. It's become much easier for companies to connect with the different stakeholders, and that enhances the efficiency, right? On the other hand, the geopolitical tensions are actually creating problems for this connectivity. So it may be, sometimes it's national security reasons, sometimes it's just rivalry between countries, sometimes it's political reasons. So various reasons have sort of driven a sort of wedge between countries, between continents. And it's not just the US and the China, which is probably the most that gets prominence in media, right? but it's also a lot of other issues that is spread across the world. And so this tension between, on the one hand, the digital connectivity, and the other hand, geopolitical tensions, that I think is what is really the challenge for us, especially for multinationals. I would say for the next 10, 15 years, that would be the most important challenge that they have to. So the framework that we try to apply here is based on understanding what is the nature of connectivity that companies have to have, and how is that dependent on the kind of tensions that is there in a local country or host country, right? So that's the context for applying this tight coupling and loose coupling framework.
Thank you, Satish-san. I understand very well. And I'm completely agree with you that connectivity is one of the key concepts, especially for Japanese manufacturing companies. This is from my experience point of view. In the supply chain management, we have seen a lot of the changes have occurred, including COVID-19. Although some things have converged, various changes will continue to occur. So Japanese manufacturing company have the headquarters in Japan, and also they have a lot of the factory and the subsidiary in the world. So the connectivity is a key concept or key factor for them. Also, supply chain management theme was how respond to changes in demand so far. However, since 2022, I think currently, in addition to changes in demand, it is necessary to respond to change in the supply side as well, especially if it comes from geographic or some political issue and so on. Furthermore, ESG needs are increasing, and responses to resilience and sustainability are required for them. So I think this your loose coupling and tight coupling, these framework is quite important for manufacturing companies, and also digital is also key factor to improve them. This is my understanding. Is it your understanding and my understanding on the same page?
Sure. Yeah, I think what you just mentioned is very, very correct. So COVID-19 actually showed us that if you try to optimize the supply chain too much, there is a risk on the other side, right? So if something happens, and if all your products are coming from one or two countries, because of the cost reasons, you have sort of concentrated that in one or two countries. And then if COVID-19 or some other issue comes up in a global arena, then you face a lot of problems. So it's not just the COVID-19, but also even local issues. If much of your manufacturing comes from, let's say, South Asia, and some geopolitical issues that are in that region, that's going to hurt your supply chain. And we saw, the Suez Canal, that when it's not just in the factories, but also in the distribution part of the supply chain, right? When goods move from one country to another country, problems in different types of transportation, all of this could lead to sort of creating a ripple effect, which really creates a lots of problem for meeting the demand in different countries. So I think you're spot on that it's not just manufacturing, but supply chain in demand fulfillment itself. I think connectivity has become very important, and companies have to carefully think about where they want to place their factories, where they want to put the distribution networks, how they want to make it flexible so that they can respond in a much more timely manner. And you also mentioned ESG. Sustainability has become very important in many parts of the world, and achieving the sustainability goals also is related to connectivity, right? Because the more you transport goods, the more there is impact on the carbon. So if issues like carbon neutrality raises questions as to where you want to put your factories, where you want to put your distribution hubs. So I think all of these are very important.
Thank you very much. Around 2000, I think offset the world will be the flat. But I think some world is not flat. How do you think about your opinion about this one? You mentioned about toward a fragmented global economy.
Right.
So could you share your opinion about this topic?
Yeah. So I think, we didn't really go from globalization to deglobalization. I think deglobalization is too much of an extreme word. We are somewhere in the middle. We still globalized economy for pretty much, most industries. We are still globalized, but we do have frictions in different parts of the world, right? And so, for example, if you take US and China, there's a whole lot of goods that come from China to the US, even now. But there is trade tensions, and so there is specific industries, specific types of products. You find that these are getting impacted. So I think it's much more fragmented global economy than deglobalized. We have lots of connections, but we also have sort of islands on sort of a fragmented nature of supply chain, fragmented nature of manufacturing, and I think overall trade. So that, I think, is something which we are going to live with for quite some time. It's not going to go away. We are not going to have fully globalized trade for a long period of time. And I think tensions that you see is going to be there for a sustained. And that means that we will need to learn how to manage supply chains in a fragmented global economy.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned about the deglobalization and the globalization combination should be more realized. I think your concept about loose coupling is a quite important thing to realize the globalization and globalization combination. So could you explain more about your loose coupling?
Sure. So the notion of loose coupling is really to do with how you organize your supply chain or how you organize your business, very broad, right? If you go back to computer science, if you're a student of computer science, you would have learned in programming that when you write a software program, you have different modules of programs you write. And you write it in a way so that it's easy to maintain. So if you want to change some part of the program, it doesn't create a ripple effect in other parts of the program. And then you have to go back and change all different parts of the software, right? So if you're developing a software product, that's one thing which you learn from day one, that you have to create a software that is loosely coupled, which means that the interactions between the different modules are not very high, and there is less interdependencies, and so it's easier to maintain the software product. Now, the same notion can be applied to organizations, business organizations. You have to structure your organization. You have to create processes in a way that easy to maintain, and so when there are changes in the context, you can respond to those changes in a very in a responsible manner. And that's the idea behind loose coupling. If you go to the next slide, you will see that what we came up with is a sort of a framework. You'll see that if you want to have high efficiency in your supply chain, you want to have very tight coupling. Every unit talks to every other unit. There's a whole lot of data that is going from one place to another part, and all the units know what is happening in other units. So there is a lot of interdependencies built in, there is redundancies built in, and that's very efficient, right? So that's a very tightly coupled. On the other hand, you can also have a decouple, which means that you allow each part of the supply chain to respond to local needs and adapt in an appropriate manner. And so there is no centralization. It's much more decentralized. So most companies don't run in a decoupled manner, multinationals, because you cannot afford to have subsidiaries making their own decisions without any broader corporate level strategic goals. So the idea here is there are two factors. One is whether your subsidiary or your part of the supply chain or the factory is unique or distinctive in the way it responds to local demands, customer needs and customer demands. And also how different parts of the multinational respond to each other. So that is the responsive. The other is the distinctiveness. And so loosely coupled is actually a trade-off, sort of sacrificing some efficiency compared to tightly coupled, but gaining some flexibility compared to decoupled. So that is the notion of loosely coupled. So that is integrated with the differential, what we call as a differentiated local autonomy. There is some autonomy for each part of the supply chain, but it's contingent on whether it needs that kind of autonomy for whatever country or a region, right? So in a highly globalized environment, multinationals would be tightly coupled. It's very easy for supply chains to be centralized and be optimized to deliver very low cost manufacturing, very low cost distribution. But as we move towards this fragmented global economy, we need to have loosely coupled. So that's the idea behind this.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is quite important for manufacturing company, which companies should aim optimization and resilience as well. I will share you some Japanese experience since 2020, which is COVID-19 having occurred. This is just an example, but I see the same situation in everywhere in Japanese manufacturing companies. The supply chain operation of many companies have been disrupted under the COVID-19 situation. Can buy, can make, and can sell. And frequent inquiries were made at all global locations about what the situation was. This is my experience. This is my assumption. Many companies have been working on the supply chain management for many years, more than 20 or 30 years. But they have been completely unable to deal with these supply chain disruptions. Why? The traditional purpose of the supply chain is basically optimization, such as production process optimization, inventory optimization, or transportation and delivery optimization. I think optimization is a concept that strengthens existing method of the assumption that the environment will not change. So optimization and resilience are fundamentally based on the concept of the trade-off. This is my understanding. And I believe this is the reason why traditional supply chain management is no longer viable as of now. So I think your concept about the loose coupling is quite important to improve or to overcome this situation. From my perspective, I think I want to focus on your global activities and operational strategies, such as intelligent hub and intelligent edge. The next part, I would like you to explain and discuss about the intelligent edge and hub concept in detail. Okay, so let's move on to part 2. So I think this is your framework and the table about the intelligent hub and the intelligent edge. Could you explain and give some insight for us in detail?
Sure, yeah. So, you mentioned a very important point, which is the trade-off between optimization and resilience, right? So if you look at companies' history, I would say from 1960s to maybe around 1990s, if you think about that time period, increasingly we were globalizing, right? As in the business world, more and more globalization was happening. And so most multinational had lots of incentive to prioritize and optimize their, like you said, in a supply chain, inventory, transportation, everything. And this is true for consumer product companies like Unilever, and as well as large automotive and other companies, manufacturing companies. And so we have been, if you think about a continuum where highly centralized and highly decentralized, we sort of moved from what was a decentralized in the 1960s to more and more centralization by the time 1980s and 1990s. And there was a lot of gain that businesses, a lot of cost and profits increased significantly because of that. And there are lots of statistics related to that. So companies discovered that if you have manufacturing, all the manufacturing in one place, then you get lots of economies of scale and scope in that particular place, which reduces the cost and and also products are relatively, because of the globalization, it's easy to transport from one country to another country. So the notion of intelligent hub is related to that you can make critical business decisions in a regional hub. And as long as globalization exists, that will work. So the key assumption is globalization will exist for a long time, right? That's the key assumption here. So then you can gain efficiencies, you can optimize all the resources that you have. And so you find that a lot of approaches, methodologies in supply chain, like just in time and all these other quality improvement programs were targeted at refining this intelligent hub. So data flows to a regional hub, decisions are made, and then decisions are given to factories in different parts to execute. And so it's an intelligent hub. I think sometime in the 2010 to mid 2000s, 2010, we started getting this notion that globalization is probably not going to be there all the time. And so we started moving towards and digital technologies became more important. So now you could actually make, you have sensors and, on the factory floors, you have the different types of sensors. You have Internet of Things, IoT, artificial intelligence, analytics. All of this has become of the more and more dominant in the last 10 to 15 years. Companies discovered that, we can make decisions very fast at the edges of our network, which is the factories, sales units, and all the different frontline units. And that actually allows companies to be much more responsive to local demands, fluctuations in those demands. That is the intelligent edge. So intelligent edge means the basic assumption is that there is going to be a lot of localization forces operating, and that will be dominant. And so you have to be very flexible, and the resilience that you mentioned earlier, you have to be resilient to changes in the external world. And so becoming resilient is through having intelligent edge. So that is the idea that, of intelligent edge. And so just in case manufacturing, again, methodologies and techniques and practices that cater to just intelligent edge became much more popular. And so you find lots of these large multinationals using digital technologies to move the decision-making to the edges of their network. So that's the idea behind the intelligent edge.
Thank you very much. I think most of the Japanese companies have been applied intelligent hub strategy, because you mentioned the factory is basically moved to China because the labor cost is quite low and it's easy to produce much more and then spread their products to the global wide. So I think intelligent hub was quite suitable for around 19 or 2000, I think. However, you already mentioned about resilience is not meet for intelligent hub strategy, I think. So intelligent hub and intelligent edge combination, which is loose coupling, should be more important. However, Japanese companies' operation is still comes from intelligent hub concept, I think. So what kind of the global operation should be done in your loose coupling concept based on intelligent hub and intelligent combination? Could you explain about your loose coupling operational strategies?
Absolutely. So I think, there is benefit in intelligent hub, and there are lots of benefits with intelligent or advantages with intelligent edge. I think the question is not either or, but how can you combine the best of both? So it is loose coupling here relates to how can you have a midpoint of situations or contexts where globalization is more dominant. You can have intelligent hub still, and where localization forces are more dominant, you can have intelligent edge. So how can you combine these two in your multinational organization? And so we have a framework which we developed. And it, like you can see, so digital technology is an enabler. It enables us to, but that's not really the true. It is a management strategy, the how you organize. That's the most important part. So this framework is really telling us how you can structure your organization. How can you achieve loose coupling in your global operations, in your supply chain? So there are 4 parts. The first part is really that you need to have a broad company level or regional level operations template. So that is like, template, for example, it could be, what is the optimal way of doing manufacturing a certain product, right? If you were highly globalized, what would be the best way? What would the optimal way of production scheduling, parts, distribution, all of those. And if you were to create a model for that, that would be the global operations template. And that's, you learn how to develop that template by collecting data from different parts of the organization. And that's what we call as a collective intelligence. So collective intelligence is the data that you get from different parts of the company over a period of time and analyze it to derive insights on how best to optimize, right? And then you have local intelligence, which is the data that you have at your factories, at your sales units, which are the frontline units. So when there are changes in the local units, when there are changes, either, for example, maybe geopolitical tensions in one part of the world, maybe there is a war started in another part of the world. So these changes are the localization forces. So you have to get the data from that, and that has to be used to adapt your global operations template. So you can modify your global operations template based on the intelligence that you gather from your local units. And once you adapt it, then you have to provide enough autonomy for your local units to actually execute that. So it should not be that the regional hubs dictate or makes all the decisions, right? You have to provide enough decision-making autonomy to some of the local units so that they can apply these adapted templates. And the final part of that is the orchestration capability. So it's not really command and controlled structure inside the company. It's more of how do you orchestrate, how do you bring together resources from internal and external in a way that facilitates these different execution formats that you have decided on. So these 4 parts of this framework tells you that you need to have a broad template for the company itself that is connected with your corporate strategy. You have to be able to adapt or modify the template to fit the local context. And then you have to provide sufficient freedom or autonomy for these local units to make those decisions. And then you have to provide the orchestration capability for the entire organization to adapt to these changes. So that's how you implement coupling so that way you may still have some elements of intelligent hub, but we also have elements of intelligent edge. So the intelligent hub element is your global operations template. That will guide the entire organization. But the intelligent edge element is how you modify the template to fit the local context. And all of these are enabled by digital technologies these days, right? You have analytics, you have artificial intelligence, you have simulation models, and you have IoT and data coming from different parts, sensors on the factory floor. All of that helps, even live stream data from your retail outlets. All of that can be brought together and to implement those kinds of things.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions about this framework at the table. My understanding is global operation template should be easy to apply for production side, but I think it is a little bit difficult to apply for especially market side because consumer demand or consumer environment is quite a difference between each country or each region, I think. I want to know how they achieve differentiated autonomy. What is the key factor to realize this one? Because I think some kind of the common purpose or something is needed to realize differentiated autonomy, even if we provide the global operation template for them.
Exactly. Yeah. So the first point that here is, you may have, you may decide that for your production, you have loose coupling, but you decide that for your marketing side, you have tight coupling, maybe because you have, let's say, a homogeneous product and a global brand. For example, to some extent, whether it is Coke or large companies, global brands may have similar marketing value propositions, although there is changes in the consumer demands in different countries. So you can mix this in a way that in some parts of your business, you have more tight coupling. In some parts of the functions or parts of the company, you have loose coupling. So, right. So I think the question that you raised was whether you need to have this in all functions. And so the answer is no. It depends on what. If you have a product that has a global consumer profile, then you can have a global operations template. So it will be like having global ambassadors or global brand advertising and marketing. But in other instances, it may be more localized branding. So it depends on the country and the company.
Thank you very much. I understand very well. Also, already you mentioned several times about the digital. So I think the digital is a key factor to realize intelligent hub and edge combination, I think. So could you explain more detail about the digital? How do we apply these digital strategies?
Yeah, sure. So, let's take the case of manufacturing, right? So that's a very good example. So if you were so we talked about the global operations template. So many of these large multinationals, from my research, I found that companies like Unilever, Bayer, all these large companies now use digital twins, which are essentially virtual models of your physical infrastructure of your factory, right? So you model your factory virtually, and that's your digital twin. And then you can run simulations on that digital twin based on data coming from different parts of your company, local data. And so these digital models become the starting point for making different types of decisions. Whether you should have, a common production schedule, or should the production schedule be customized in certain factories to respond to local needs. And what technology has allowed us is to reduce the time it takes to take the data from one place to another place, analyze it, run the simulations hundreds and thousands of times, and get the insights from that back to wherever they need to be to take action. So technology has allowed us to crunch a large amount of data in a very short period of time and use these analytical models to inform your decision making. I think that's what has happened for example, in manufacturing. And this can be very time sensitive decisions. So if you think that there is very fast changing situations in some part of the world, then you assign more autonomy to those local units to make decisions. I think technology is most important and it is crucial, but the structure of the organizations, the decision-making freedom that you provide to different units, and most importantly, the ability of the individual talent, your managers and your employees to use that is also equally important.
Thank you so much. I suppose it's quite important to identify the market or product or company is how globalized or decentralized. So could you explain about how do we evaluate the intensity of the globalization and the localization forces?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, the tension between optimization and resilience is to some extent dependent on which part of the world you are in, right? So for example, if you take European Union, EU, you'll find that there is a set of countries in EU which has pretty much the same set of characteristics in terms of markets. But if you go to South Asia, India, Pakistan, Vietnam, Philippines, if you look at that region, you find that there is more, it's much more heterogeneous. We have a very simple, so I think managers have to be careful to think about which part of the world they are doing business and how that context matters. So there are three parts of this. It's a very simple instrument that anybody can use to evaluate how much globalization, how much localization is there in a particular market. So this is really, you have to do, so if a company has, let's say 5 main markets in the world, then you do this for each of those markets. And they look at policies, whether the policies are amenable for globalization or for localization, right? For example, policies related to market entry. What are the rules and regulations related to foreign companies entering a particular industry in a particular country? And then infrastructure, access to technological infrastructure, access to business infrastructure, whether it is open to all or whether there is preferences to domestic companies, right? I think that's very important. And the third is culture, whether the culture connects with the global culture, which is very homogeneous, or whether there is consumers who place more importance on domestic companies compared to foreign companies. So, nationalistic sentiments, geopolitical tensions, all of these feed into deciding whether a particular market is more globalized or more localized. And understanding that is very important. I also want to emphasize that the same country may be globalized in one industry and more localized in another industry. So if you think about US, for example, right now, in consumer products, it's very globalized. We get products from different parts of the world. But if you think about semiconductors or even artificial intelligence technologies, you find that it's becoming more and more localized. There is a lot more policies, regulations coming into preventing foreign companies from entering United States, foreign companies from buying companies, technology and companies in the US. And so you find that 2 different industries in the same country, one is more globalized and the other more localized. So you have to think about not just the country, but also the industry or the sector.
Okay, thank you very much. So I understand it's quite important to understand how product and industry and region was influence on infrastructure or politics and so on, I think. I would like you to know about your opinion. This is from my point of view. Generally, there are 2 types of the organization and decision-making exist to manage supply chain. Type A, this type controls supply and demand by a global centralized organization. I think this type is common among companies that concentrate production in China or South Asia and sell in the global market, such as smartphone, laptop, and so on. And type B, this type is produce and supply where there is a market, and control of supply and demand done locally. So this is common in such as home appliance product or CPG, especially in Japan, I think. So many companies often fall into one of these types due to physical supply chain network constraints or infrastructure of like Southeast Asia and so on. So, but I think it should be more combined, not only intelligent hub, but also we should or they should apply intelligent edge as well, because intelligent edge, complete intelligent edge decision making might be a decoupled process. So it will be a lot of the cost insufficiency, inefficiency might be happen. So I'd like to know how these intelligent hub and edge should be combined beyond infrastructure or political constraint. I think this is one of the key points to realize optimization and resilience both. So if you have any insight about this topic, could you let us know?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. The nature of the product also varies. So one thing which I want to emphasize here is that many of the products that we use today have a digital component and a physical component, right? So if you buy a car, there is more digital now in the car than 10 years ago or 20 years ago. If you buy a refrigerator, there is more digital content today than 10 years ago. So increasingly, our products more and more digitized, and also getting a lot of services through our products. So you get, whether it is your navigation services or entertainment services on your car, they are services. So I think when you think about intelligent hub, intelligent edge, you also need to think about the product and how the digital and physical components. So the physical components have to be manufactured. But digital components can be, it's much easier to, it's more amenable to be shifted in. So let me take an example. If you make a car today, you have to manufacture the physical parts. And so you have a factory for that. You also need to create a lot of software, right? It becomes part of your car. It's not easy to change. If tomorrow, if like I said, if COVID-19 or something happens, it's not easy to change the factory from one place to another place because it's a physical infrastructure. But it's very, very easy to move the production of the software from one country to another country. So you find that, physical and digital parts of your product have different flexibility when it comes to whether it is production or supply chain or movement or marketing. So one has to be careful about how much of your product is servitized or services coming through, how much of it is actual physical product, tangible physical product. The more physical, tangible product, then you have to be more careful about combining intelligent hub and intelligent edge. And if there's more digital component, then it gives you more flexibility into, to going back to this optimization resilience. It gives you more flexibility to adapt to changes in different market conditions.
Oh, I see. So I think it's quite interesting for me, considering digital component and the physical component. I agree with you. Okay, and also I think this is just my idea, but I think this is one idea to realize loose coupling strategy by combining hub and edge, which is mixed decision making depends on the length of the decisions involved in the supply chains. The basic strategy for long-term decision making, such as which market should be expanded and how much, these kinds of the decision making is made by hub. Short-term planning and execution, as well as adjusting marketing and supply chain conditions, considering actions are done on edge. So I think these kind of the combination and digital technology such as AI, machine learning, and IoT will support this decision making. So this combination this is just my idea. So Do you have any example of the company that already implement these kind of the decision making?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting context where long-term planning or strategy for the corporate level would
Yes.
definitely be made at a hub, your regional headquarters or global headquarters, and that has a lot of other macro trends that inform what kind of strategy, right? What kind of product. I think if you take the case of, let's say, Unilever, which has actually gone through, if you think about a continuum from centralization to decentralization, Unilever has gone through this couple of times on in the continuum. It used to be highly decentralized because, for example, if you have in India, it used to be Hindustan Lever, which was autonomous. It made all the decisions for Unilever in Indian market. And the only connection with the Unilever in the corporate London was financial, but all the decisions used to be made. This was in 1980s. And then they discovered this globalization, and so they decided on more integration of the functions across regions. And so we had a lot more centralization in Unilever. So we had a global marketing, global supply chain management, all those they were created. And then towards, like I said, to 2000, 2010, they started shifting back towards more decentralization to some extent. So if you go back to this example of long-term planning, some of the, what kind of product to make, that is now to a great extent decentralized. What should be the broad corporate goals, that is the centralized. So you need in its corporate headquarters in London, make the broad decisions. So sustainability goals, goals related to growth, all of those big decisions are made there. But then you see that the managers in regional countries have more freedom to decide how they want to execute on that strategy. You find, I think one way I would put it is that long-term planning itself can be split into two parts. One part is the broad corporate level goals and objectives, which remains at the hub. And then the second part is product level decisions, product strategies, brand strategies, that's gradually becoming more decentralized. So I think that's what is happening in some of these large companies. But it is also, so it depends on the history of the company and the leadership. Not all the companies are like that. But I think that's one way to think about that. You could have some of the long-term planning given to regional country managers who would have that responsibility.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is a quite interesting use case for me. So Unilever has a centralized and decentralized history, and they apply their decision making based on the product or long-term strategy and so on. So I think these kind of the mix should be one of the way to realize loose coupling strategy. Okay, so let's move on to final part of this dialogue. So I would like to discuss about how Japanese companies should be moved forward. I think we believe supply chain management has entered 5.0, especially in Japan. Supply chain management efforts have been actively carried out since around 2000. 1.0 is pursue efficiency, 2.0 is flexibility, and 3.0 is profitability, because there was a financial crisis 2008. 4.0 is productivity, utilizing digital technologies. But all of these policy is assumed a static supply chain environment. But now they must pursue resilience and sustainability in a dynamic supply chain environment. So how do you see Japanese company compared to foreign companies? So you mentioned about Unilever's case. Unilever is already achieved this 5.0 capability. How do you think about it?
Right. I think, Unilever has gone through a big digital transformation initiative over the last, I would say, 2012 onwards or 2014 onwards. They have been on a big change in digital transformation. And sustainability has been a big part of it, and building more resilience. So they have, creating digital twins in the factories, a lot of sensors on factory floor, IoT, and all those technologies have allowed them to be much more dynamic in terms of the supply chain management. Also, a lot of focus on employees and human centricity has also come. So I think, obviously, Unilever has companies have presence in, I think, some 180 different countries. So there might be some variation. In some countries, they are much more advanced than other countries. But I know that in India, for example, they are well ahead in the digital initiatives. They are actually among all Unilever companies, the Hindustan Unilever is at the front on digital transformation. So they have connected what we call as Kirana stores, which are the local stores, digitally to their sales and marketing function. And all the factories are connected. They have very fast data transfer capabilities, analytics all built in, a lot of applications of machine learning algorithms in making decision-making on the supply chain and on the factory floors. So I think they are well ahead, at least to my understanding, of many other countries in terms of realizing what you call as a supply chain 5.0.
Thank you very much. Of course, in Japanese manufacturing company implemented a lot of the digital technologies for their supply chain management, but main purpose is efficiency and optimization. So you mentioned about the Unilever implement AI and a lot of the IoT technologies since 2012, but it's pursue resilience. So I realized there are more than 10 years gap between Unilever and most of the Japanese manufacturing companies.
I think, I think it has gone through the companies. So there is a learning process here. It's not just the digital technology, right? Digital technology is very important, but also the leadership. Leadership is very important. And I think that is something which is worth, discussing how the leadership enables or exploits or leverages the digital technologies.
I see. Again, this is, you already mentioned several times, but many Japanese companies have promoted efficiency improvement in a specific business areas, such as production, logistics, and sales separately. As a result, each operational areas have become extremely tight coupled. While horizontal operation to connect the supply chain have become decoupled. I think this is still Japanese actual situation. Also, with major goal of the cost reduction, so Japanese companies have built tight coupling supply chain and its management process based on aggregation and arbitrage. So Japanese companies have basically focused on tight coupling. How should combine loose coupling in the future? What should be the first step? How to utilize digital technologies? How to break away from conventional values of top management? So I think you already mentioned digital and leadership. So if you have any more insight about what kind of leadership should be Japanese manufacturing CEO or CXO should be take, could you explain about your leadership, what we need to implement?
Absolutely. So I think in my view, leadership comes before digital technology. Leadership is the number one factor. If you don't have good, correct leadership, then technology cannot help you, right? I think the nature of leadership that you want is people who understand the capability of the technology, but also are aware of, provide a more holistic view of what where the organization should be heading to in terms of the the tension between resilience and efficiency, for example. So we still need to optimize different parts of our business. We still need to have a lot of efficiency in the company. But where should the resilience be built in? Where should the redundancies? Where should the flexibility be built in? So which part of the business needs to be flexible? Where can we have more efficiency built in? I think understanding that is really important part of the leadership. And those leaders are also people who can create the right structure in the organization that would help, for example, we talked about autonomy for decision making. So autonomy, you can, which units should be provided autonomy and what is the rationale for that? And how should you train your managers to exercise that autonomy? All of this should be equally important. So here leadership requires, whether it is a CEO or whether it's a COO, Chief Operating Officer, to really understand where is the whole company, what is the footprint of the company, which parts of the world are they likely to face challenges, what kind of geopolitical challenges are likely to be there. And from there, you provide a structure for the company so that it can use technology to be much more responsive, but at the same time, not forsake entire efficiency. So I think to a great extent, it also has to have a cultural change, organizational culture that provides or emphasizes, this ability to make decisions in a local unit and not just have a command and control structure. So I think those are very important parts. So essentially, you have to provide a broad vision for how the company should create value, but it's a vision that allows regional managers and individual managers enough freedom and flexibility to make decisions so that they can adapt to whatever is going on in their part of the world. I think so. If the CEO is a command and control type leader, that's probably not going to work. We want leaders who are willing to provide their managers with more freedom to make decisions, but have a careful, well-reasoned, thought out reason for that. I think that's very important.
Thank you very much. I realize that leadership hub and leadership edge should be more important for, I think, rules coupling leadership.
Yes, yeah. I think it, finally it comes down to people, right? How good your talent is, how good your managers are. So you can have the most sophisticated digital technologies, but if you don't have the right manager in the right place to make use of those data and decisions, to make the right decisions, then it's not going to work. So eventually it comes down to having the right talent who can use technologies to make the appropriate decisions. And so technology is only an enabler, but leadership and talent are the most important factor.
Thank you very much. I'm completely agree with you. I would like to say to Japanese company, human-centric strategy is more important to overcome this environment.
Yes.
This is our final question for you. So if we implement or apply digital more and connect globally in physical and digital, then I think the risk should be more higher and higher. What kind of risk should we control? Could you explain about this topic?
Yeah. So I think the digital connectivity has created new risk. So on the one hand, we have lots of benefits through digital connectivity, but it also has created risk. So I think the key idea here is, are you aware of those risks? Do you have strategies to manage those risks? Those are the things. In this, we identify some of those, for example, information security risk, which is very, very important for multinational companies. So you have data about your consumers, data about your business in different parts of the world. And there are cybersecurity threats and all kinds of other issues that come up. And we have seen a number of examples of data being lost and data being stolen. I think that's very, very important. So the more data you have, the more you're exposed to these kinds of risks. The other is reputation fragility, which is, when you have loose coupling, you provide more freedom to your frontline units, factories, and even your ecosystem partners. And so some of those activities of your ecosystem partners may create a reputational risk for you. So we have seen examples in companies such as where one of your partner of a company misuse the data of consumers, and that has a reputational risk for the multinational company. Then institutional infrastructural risk. This is very important. For example, when geopolitical tensions come in, sometimes you find that in a particular country, the government decides to restrict the access of your company's access to certain types of digital infrastructures. And that is a big risk. So if you don't think about that and you put all your applications and everything, and suddenly one fine morning, the government that particular country's government says that you don't have access to this type of infrastructure for various reasons, for example, for national security reasons, then I think that creates risk. So these are risks that are created because of the digital connectivity. And so multinationals have to be aware of those risks and also have explicit strategies to manage them or mitigate them. So that is important.
Thank you very much. Resilience, and also I think risk management is quite a hot topic in the context of supply chain management as well. So thank you very much. I think I want to discuss with you more and more, but it's already time's up. Finally, could you give us some message to Japanese companies which should be realized digital multinational?
So I think our key message in the book and the research that we did is each company has to make its own decisions as to how much loose coupling it really requires. And we talked about that. Which industry are you in, right? What industry, what kind of product do you sell? What countries are you in the business? So some companies may have only in South Asia. Some countries may be only in EU. So how many different regions are you operating in? So each company has to make the decision as to how much loose coupling they need based on the products, industry sectors, countries, and once you know that, then you have to have, I think the first part is the leadership part, that as the CEO or the C-suite, managers have to evaluate each big foreign markets they are doing and what kind of globalization, localization forces are there. And then you start thinking about the digital strategies that you need to implement and also adapt the organizational structure to fit that kind of strategy. And very important, also train your managers to be in that environment, to make use of the technologies, to make use of the data, to make use of the insights from those data so that they can make the right decisions. So I think, it all starts with senior leadership evaluating the company context, the industry and market context, geopolitical context, and developing a broad strategy for the company, and getting on the digital transformation initiative, which is what companies like Unilever has done, and in parallel, training their managers, training their employees, and changing the organizational structure and processes to adapt to these, to make better use of these technologies. So I think it's a journey. It's going to take a longer time. For Unilever, I think it has taken them at least 10, 15 years. And they're still in the process of learning new things. But I think that's one starting point that we could do.
Okay, so thank you very much. Today, I wanted to say thank you to have this quite nice and valuable opportunity to talk with you. And I want to continue to provide our consulting service with your concept, strategy framework, and your final advice. So again, today we could have good communication about your loose coupling strategies, and I would like to say thank you again. So I would like to close this interview session. So thank you very much, Satish-san.
Thank you, Sasakawa. Thank you very much. I enjoyed that.
And I hope we can meet you soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much. So I will close this interview and the dialogue. Thank you very much.